The dead of winter, the cold, bleak landscape speaks of internment, mammals hibernating, humans wishing that they could, stillness, as in the lack of activity. Most people dread winter and yearn for the warming rays of the sun. Winter is biting cold, gray days, long nights, nothing moves, frozen ponds, frozen everything. The dead of winter, when activity comes to a standstill. Wrong. Hi, I'm Chuck Arning, National Park Service Ranger, here in the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor. And if you think winter is the absence of activity, then you are sadly mistaken. For in fact, winter is a wonderfully alive season with lots of bird, mammal, amphibian, and even human activity taking place. What? You think I've been out in the cold too long? Well, I'll tell you what. Join me as we put to sleep those myths about those cold, dreary winter days and really find out about the vitality the winter has to offer.
Well, I skated and I skied. And when I was younger, I had a lot of sledding. We did a tremendous amount of sledding. We had a lot of hills. Boy, they didn't get plowed, so you packed them down and down you went, you know, and we did that. And plowing then was not as extensive as it is today. They just plowed the main roads, the side roads, those not used too much. They were a hazard to use. Because, of course, most people put their cars up on blocks back then in the wintertime. My father did, everybody did. They'd put the car in the garage, jack up the rear end, put blocks underneath, get the wheels off the ground, and they'd jack up the front end and do the same thing. They stayed there till April.
Well, you know, those Model Ts, they were really something else. You had to crank them. We were lucky. We lived on the top of a hill. If it was cold weather, we just pushed out in the street and rolled down the hill and got it started that way. You didn't have to crank it. And of course, the wintertime was just awful because they didn't have any snow removal like they have today. All they had was a wedge-shaped wooden thing full of rocks with a horse pulling it. It just broke up the snow a little bit. But it left about a residue of 6 or 8 inches of snow. It was just awful getting through it. You had to have tire chains, or you couldn't get anywhere. And of course, most of the cars were open, and they had these fabric sides you could attach, but it was just awful cold.
We never went on the Blackstone. The water there was never good. I mean, the ice, the water was there. It never froze solid, just along the edges. So we stayed away from that back there. We would not get on ice unless it was 6 inches thick. We would cut a hole and measure it, and if it was less than 6 inches, stay away, because it was dangerous. And we would get a large crowd on the ice, so it made it even more dangerous. You had all that weight.
And of course, before that, we had a sleigh, and we used to, you hear these stories about Christmas time, how much fun is riding in an open sleigh. It isn't any fun at all. You freeze to death.
After listening to those stories, try and tell me the winter is a great active season. Still not buying it, huh? Well, I'll tell you what, let's catch up with National Park Service Ranger Dick Kleber, our own Blackstone River Valley naturalist, to set us straight on the level of activity in the wild world of Mother Nature. But be forewarned, you may learn a few things you didn't know. And Dick, this is a fairly active time of winter, isn't it?
It's a lot more active than it seems.
That's true.
You know, a lot of people think it's so quiet, everybody's hibernating. Do you know that there's only, what, 3, 4, 5 animals in New England that really hibernate?
Really?
Hibernation is a pretty specialized thing. First of all, temperature goes way down. A woodchuck, for instance, temperature can go down to 40 degrees. And of course, when the temperature goes down, that means their breathing slows down, their heartbeat slows down, and therefore they require less energy, and they can live off the fat that they've developed during the summertime. So we've got the woodchuck, we've got both little and big brown bat, and the woodland jumping mouse. Those are the only real true hibernators. A bear, people think of bears as hibernating. They don't hibernate, they sleep. A skunk out every day of the year. But if it's a real wintry day or wintry night, he'll stay in the den for a while, then go out after the storm's over. So there's a lot more activity than you really think. You know, this is a good spot though. Take a look at this ice behind us. People think, boy, nothing could live under there. Well, first of all, remember that ice forms on the top of the water. Why? Because water is at its densest at 39 degrees. So we get the cool of fall and winter, pretty soon the water cools down to 39 degrees. All sinks to the bottom. If it gets colder than that, it starts to come up again. And therefore, you can get the freezing at 32 degrees at the surface, not the bottom. So even though the surface of the pond is completely frozen, down bottom there's plenty of water. So amphibians like frogs, some of the toads, salamanders, they're all living down there. Fish swim around under the ice. Lots of aquatic insects. All kinds of things are happening. We just can't see them.
So really it's quite an active time. It's just they put a house over the water so we can't see it as well.
Exactly. And the same's true in the woods. The animals are taking their time under protection. They might be under the leaves. They'll come out for food. Even when the snow gets waist deep, they're still out, but they're in underneath the snow to keep warm.
They make a lot of tunnels, don't they, through the snow?
They do indeed. And of course the predators, all the predators are still around looking for food, and they'll go down after the animals that are making the tunnels. These cracks in the granite rock here, what an ideal spot for animals. Chipmunks, they store their acorns around here. Actually, the chipmunks will take a lot of the acorns right down into their tunnel with them. They kind of keep their food in their bed so they can have a midnight snack. Of course, if they didn't collect enough food, they wake up in the middle of the winter, and then they have to go out looking for food. Squirrels will bury their acorns and things like that, or put them in the crevices of the rocks, and then they come back and look for those things. They'll even burrow down under the snow, looking for places where they planted these different acorns. That's why the animals that bury their food are a great help in our reforestation. Can you hear that? There's a nuthatch calling over there, and a crow. There's all kinds of activity. Of course, birds don't hibernate. They go south for the winter. People oftentimes wonder why. The real truth is it's food. It's when their food starts to disappear that they have to go south looking for food. The ones that stay up around here, nuthatches, things like that, burrow under the bark of trees. They're looking for grubs, spider eggs, things like that. Blue jays, all kinds of other birds looking for nuts and seeds. That's their food. So it depends on what you eat and where you are.
Now, as far as owls go, what kind of owls would we see in the winter here in New England?
Well, same kind of owls that you see in the summertime, but you have a better chance of seeing them because there are no leaves in the trees. Also, the owls are one of the first birds to breed. And so at the end of January, the great horned owl starts calling, and they're very vocal. So you'll hear them, that'll call your attention to them, and oftentimes you can see them. But the great horned owl is the first of our birds to nest. Matter of fact, he's got his eggs laid, or she has her eggs laid. By the end of February, they start to hatch out. So this wintertime is perfect for them. We oftentimes get migrating owls. The snowy owl, the great gray owl, the hawk owl. These owls will come from much further north. Where food is scarce up there, they come down here. Now, it isn't every year. Snowy owls' migration is basically based on the population of the lemming, which is a little mouse-like creature. And they have a cycle. They build up a population and then suddenly the population drops every 4 years. And so when that population drops, the snowy owl comes further south searching for food. Now every 20 years, it's kind of a real peak, and you get lots and lots of snowy owls coming south. Oh, there's so many different things that can affect the activity of animals. I mean, here we are, the dead of winter, cold, and yet there's an awful lot of activity and no snow. Next year at this exact time, there might be lots of snow. The animals aren't going to change. They're ready to do their thing no matter whether we have snow or not.
Now, Dick, in the case of snow, is that a hindrance or a help to the animals?
Well, you would think that it was a hindrance, but really, in truth, it's a help. First of all, if you get a layer of snow on the ground, a foot or more, it's tremendous insulation. And so the animals don't require a lot of energy to keep warm. They can tunnel under the snow very easily. They can find plenty of food. They can go lifting up leaves and stuff in their tunnels under the snow. So they find it's a lot warmer, and they can still find food. The predators can go down in the tunnels as well as the animals, so they find food. So snow is no disadvantage. It really, if you look at it closely, it would be an advantage.
So for the general public that wants to go for a walk on a winter day, and they may seem to think that the world is dead out there, if they're observant, there's an awful lot of things taking place.
Tremendous. First of all, there's the footprints of all kinds of animals you can see. And then you'll see where they've disappeared under a rock or, you know, into a snowbank. And if you pay attention to what they've done, those footprints really tell a story. If you look around, you can tell whether a predator, like a weasel, has gone down the hole after one of these animals. The predators do not travel under the snow like the regular animals do. Deer mouse is very active during the wintertime. And so he'll spend an awful lot of his time right under the snow. Meadow voles, well, depending on where you are, every habitat in New England can offer a different story in animals.
So it's just, if we're a little bit more observant, we can key in on the activity that takes place in the winter.
Just take your time and keep your eyes open. That's what makes it all fun.
I used to hunt. Yeah, when I started in when I was about 15, you had to be 15 to get a license then. We never got much game. It was mostly hunting. But I kept it up until I was 78. I managed to struggle along till I was 78. But it was fun to get out in the woods.
I was a kid, and I loved the woods back then. My mind ran ahead of me. I was a famous explorer or a famous trapper, or so. And, you know, in my mind's eye, I was doing all those things that somebody I'd read about in the books or something like that was doing. I was doing the same thing. And then one thing led to another, I guess, and finally I did my own trapping. I got my traps. I bought them secondhand, and I started trapping. Well, for me, it was Rice City Pond, which is in the Rice City section of Uxbridge. On the northern end, up above the dam. The pond was quite large back then. And I fished mainly on the west side because that's where I saw most of the muskrat mounds in the water, and laid the traps out along the shore. And you would catch them that way.
Now, why were you trapping at that age?
Get money. It was the Depression, money was hard to come by. You could get a nickel for a pelt, or you could get, that is a muskrat pelt, you could get a quarter for an otter pelt, 50 cents for a mink. And if you caught an otter or a mink, that was rare, but that was good. You really got something then, you know. So we, that was basically it. It wasn't because I wanted to catch animals, it was a way of making money.
Just like members of the wild kingdom who were very active during the winter months, so was man. Because you see, man still has to make a living. Matter of fact, many people look forward to the winter months because you see the changing seasons also bring about changing tasks. Now let's catch up with Danny Richardson of South Uxbridge and learn what this farmer does during the winter months.
Oh, we've been here since 1735. We have used the sawmill. I couldn't tell you how many years we've had the sawmill. And they've also had raised sheep for clothing. At one time we also had on this property, or adjacent to the property on the other end, was a carding machine where they used to card the wool for clothing. In the wintertime it's very different. It's a much slower pace. It's a time when we will get wood ready for the following year, dry it, split it, and so forth. And then also different people come in with their logs and they want it cut up into lumber so it'll be dry to work with next year. And we also have hay that we have extra in the summer, so we sell it in the winter also. And so we have a lot of people come around, and it makes it an enjoyable time of the year, even though it's cold and, and a lot of snow sometimes.
Sometimes is the snow a benefit to you as far as pulling some of the wood out of the forest?
In the woods, if you have a small amount of snow, it is a lot easier to work in the woods. Everything is, the obstacles are covered up, and the machinery can get over them a lot easier. And the logs, when you're working with them in the woods, they slide a lot easier on the snow. It's just a natural thing. And we have to work with the weather on that too, because like this year it's open right now and there's not any snow, and it's even thawed in the woods. So yeah, and the ground is completely saturated, so you have to log in the higher elevations, and when they harden up, if they do, then we'll go to the lower parts and get them out. Otherwise it'll look like a bomb hit the woods where it'll be devastating. You'll have ruts and everything else. It just isn't nice. It doesn't look nice for the homeowner or the landowner, and it doesn't agree with that type of working. Well, we just always were concerned about leaving the thing as we found it. You know, we like to go out and work on the fields and everything else, and when we're done with it, we're proud of what we did. And when someone else looks at the job we did, they can equally be proud also that it was done right. A lot of times they'll bring the family up, you know, and we'll take and saw it out for them, and they'll have their truck right here. They love to see the operation, and we'll load it right on their truck, and when the job is done, they go home and they got all their wood, and we cut it to their specifications. No matter how ridiculous it may seem, what they want is what they get.
Now that's one of the unique things you do. You kind of specialize in custom sawing, don't you?
Yes, we do. We do custom sawing because it's a necessary thing. You just can't go and get a piece of thickness of wood or size in the store off the shelf, what you need sometimes. So we'll make it up to fit, and if we can't make it to fit, nobody can. It was a hands-on operation, and you never stop learning. You have to learn. You have to learn every day, and in fact, you have some challenges that come along. You'll look at a log and you'll say, "I can get that out of it," and then before you get through, you even work it even more to get more out of it. It's a learning experience that never stops. You have to love it or else you won't keep it up.
So it's kind of fun from you always being challenged.
Oh yeah, that's the best part. Always being challenged, because if you say you know it all, you're all done. You're finished.
Pretty much an analytical type of guy to take a look at this big tree and figure out how much wood you can get out of it.
Yes, that's what we try to do in the beginning. Like a piece of timber like this, it's a 16-foot log, and we can get some 2x6s out of it, 2x8s. If we were building a post and beam building, you could get a 6x8 out of it. And you always strive to get as much as you can out of it, because you have to realize it takes so long to grow this tree and it takes so little time to saw it up. And you can destroy a vast amount of time quickly. And we always would like to get as much as we can off the outside of it. As some clear stock now and then. It makes a good molding material. And moldings today, you can buy a whole lot of it in the store, and most of it's finger jointed. It's a lot of it's of poorer quality. The price is still high, but we just don't want to waste it. What took so long to grow? You know, a tree like this, a log like this, you probably take less than 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes to saw it up, and it took probably the better part of 50 years to grow.
Well, that's an interesting conservation ethic that you have. Part of being a farmer and a sawmill operator, that you really are in touch with the land, because these are resources, and we have to pay attention as we get the most out of them, because it took a lot of time to grow them.
It does. It takes an awful lot of time to grow them, and whether you're working in the field with crops or anything else, you have to remember that it takes time to grow it, and the outcome is in your hands. You have to take and do it correctly, or else you lose all or a lot of the product. And we always got to remember that.
Now, I'll tell you what, why don't we just kind of wander inside there and take a look at your sawmill operation, maybe explain a couple of things about it to us.
Okay.
Dan, how do you get the log ready so you're just lining it up so it hits the saw?
We rolled it down the skidway, and we rolled it onto this carriage that takes it back and forth past the saw. And once it's on there, then we more or less eye it up on how we have to slice it to get a minimal amount of slab wood. And then afterwards, then we can tell by this scale board that how many inches are left in the log. It's approximate. It'll tell you exactly when you look at this wheel and you know about where you are. You can tell within a quarter of an inch exactly where you are. And when you pull on this handle, every time you're advancing it, the way it's set, advancing an inch. But when the inch is made, it also allows for the saw cut to take a quarter of an inch to let the saw slide through. So actually you're pulling it 5 quarters at a pull. And then when you want to go to 2 inch or 3 inch or 4 inch, then you constantly have to drop the quarter of an inch on the second and third in consecutive pulls. So you have to be a little bit of a mathematician at the same time. And then after you've seen some of the boards come off the log, they had edges on them that were all rounded and whatnot. Years ago, we used to bring them all back here and edge them on what they call the head saw. But now, with the edger installed, the fellow operating the edger, which was Alan, he just takes and puts the boards on there. One saw is fixed, one saw is movable. So he can adjust it to what he believes the board will make after it's trimmed. So it trimmed off the edges and then it goes back, and then it's a marketable board after it's finished, or a board that anybody wants to build with.
Well, the manual operation you have here makes it a lot easier for you to do custom sawing, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It is a thing that don't have to be set up for anything. We can change our minds in the middle of midstream, so to speak, and do just about any kind of cut we want with it.
And you really are a jack of all trades, part land steward, part mathematician, tree analyst. It's amazing how many skills it take to run a little sawmill, a little farm like this.
We run the whole thing pretty much. We pride ourselves in being able to set it all up and all. We taken what you call a jack of all trades, master of none probably, but like even when we set up the hydraulic log turner, that was something that we did with little help, but we did the actual work itself. The pump for this, when we bought it, the hydraulic pump didn't come with it, and so we had an old dump body which was off of a 1932 Chevrolet, and we took the hydraulic pump off of that and lined it up with this thing here, and it works. So we always take pride in doing it ourselves.
Yankee ingenuity.
Yankee ingenuity, that's the way it's always been. And the farm just keeps going that way, and I hope as long as somebody can keep thinking for themselves, it'll keep going that way.
Now, when you were a young guy starting to grow up, how did you know you're going to gravitate back to the mill and to the farm?
See, we didn't know. We just grew up, and we loved being here. Originally, my great-grandfather, he was here also. We worked with him. And of course, we didn't do much. We were probably in his way more than anything else. But he loved it because it's something to keep him going. And he died when he was 97.
What was one of the more important things that your dad and your granddad taught you about the land and the farm here that you remember?
Geez, while it wasn't an actual teaching, we just worked with them all the time. Well, they were teaching us and we didn't even know it. And they just would follow along with them, and they'd show us how to prepare the ground for the different crops. And
what do you feel is the relationship between what your family does here and the land that you live on?
Well, it's a relationship that we all have loved. As you go out and work in the fields and everything else, you can almost sense the feeling of the previous generations. I mean, I'm closer to my father here than I would be at the cemetery where he's buried. And I believe everybody has always felt the same way. The people that really built the place and worked here are people that we will never forget. And we just constantly think about them. A lot of days, things will go by and we'll say, geez, my father wouldn't have done it that way. And it's, or even my great-grandfather, you think about it, you say, geez, I don't think he'd like it like that. Let's try something different. And as long as you can keep relating back and forth, and you think you have all these critics watching you, I think you do a better job.
There is a great relationship between those who are stewards of the land, those who care and nurture it, and wildlife. Wildlife needs habitat, and it is the land stewards, like the Richardsons, who create and maintain a place for wildlife to live and thrive. And winter is a good time to think about such things, a relationship to the land and its wild inhabitants. Well, this has been National Park Service Ranger Chuck Arning with the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor, and I exhort you to get out and enjoy one of nature's most vivid seasons, winter. And who knows, you just might catch that rare moment when wildlife's natural beauty is performed just for you. And next time you're in the valley, stop in and say hi.